Raindrops, we are live, okay? Because so much is going on with this Diddy trial that I was like, Ebony, I know you have 10,000 jobs. You are a mother. You got baby Liberty on deck. And listen here, before we let the day go, we have to talk about the breaking news from the Diddy trial, which, Ebony, I want you to break all of this down. It's breaking the internet. There's
Yes.
sources who are saying that they feel like Diddy may get off. The federal prosecutors have decided to rest their case. Diddy is not testifying. There's so many updates in the sense of some things were dropped by the prosecution. So, Ebony, listen, there's so
Yes.
much going on. You have all the tea, sister. Explain to the raindrops what is happening with this Diddy trial.
It's a lot. It's a lot, Carlos. No, your scope is spot on. There are 16 different moving parts at least right now happening right now as we go into what will definitely be the tail end, the conclusion of the United States of America versus Sean Combs. So you hit some of it right on the head, Carlos. What we know for sure is that Sean Combs will not be testifying in his own defense. And we discussed that last episode.
And to not to cut you off, but I
Yeah.
love to get Ebony K. Williams all her props. Ebony K. Williams said if she was the defense attorney, she will also elect for him not to testify.
No, he does himself no favors. I'm really glad that he either listened to legal counsel from his defense team that I'm sure advised him as I would have as well, which is sit down, be quiet. And also, let's keep in mind, raindrops, going back to Sean Combs's previous trial in New York, the gun charge with the club shooting where Johnny Cochran was on his defense team. He did testify, Carlos. So I want to flag that this is a market change of behavior from Sean Combs, where last time he insisted on testifying, got a good outcome. Ultimately, he was acquitted. He was found not guilty in that case. But this time, very different facts, very different era, very different crimes being alleged. Sean Combs decides not to testify. And I do think, Carlos, as you acknowledged, thank you, that was the right legal move on his part.
Yes. Okay. So, Ebony, set the record straight. Diddy is not testifying. Ebony called that weeks ago.
Yeah.
And breaking news today that has broken the internet, the prosecutors decided to simplify some of the charges for the sake of the jury. Yes. TMZ is calling it dumbing down. I want Ebony K. Williams to break it down for us, but I'll tell you guys what's happening. Prosecutors are not pursuing the attempted arson claim that Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car in a jealous rage, because during the trial, prosecutors never directly linked Diddy to the fire. Ebony, before I read the rest of what they're trying to simplify for the jury, explain to us why the prosecutors are not going to pursue the attempted arson claim that Diddy himself blew up Kid Cudi's car.
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah, you're right. So, because it's a lot. So I want to be clear, raindrops. The prosecution is not, they're not taking away charges, actually. So that's clear. So there's only 3 charges. Okay, so let's zoom out, right? The racketeering, which is the RICO, okay? The sex trafficking, okay? And the prostitution across state lines, okay? Those are the 3 federal charges, and they remain, Carlos. But as you just said, what they are doing is they are simplifying the jury instruction, okay? So remember at the very last episode I talked to you about, I was hearing from sources that the jury instructions were over 120, 130 pages, right? Mm-hmm. And just so y'all know, raindrops, the jury instructions are literally black and white pieces of paper in addition to what the judge says, but they also get documents, okay? Hundreds of pages sometimes of documents, normally not, but in a case of this magnitude, yes, that is instructing them on what should be considered and what not should be considered, meaning people they've heard from testifying throughout this case, Carlos, photos they've seen, videos they've watched, and other pieces of evidence. So that's what's in that jury instruction. So the prosecution today, breaking news live, which is why we're live right now, has written a letter to the judge instructing the judge, well, letting the judge know, making the judge aware, I should say, that they do not plan to proceed in their jury instruction rather, to specifically prove the predicate acts. And we talked a lot about predicate acts on our series here with you know, True Crime Thursdays. And those predicate acts, Carlos, are some of the 35 plus criminal activities, okay, that would qualify to successfully meet the requirement of proving the racketeering charge. So I think RICO is the big umbrella charge, and under that raindrop, you got 35, 36, 37 different things, including arson, kidnapping, bribery, wiretapping. All of those are examples. Murder is on there too. Rape is on there too. Sexuals, okay?
Okay.
You named it, Carlos. The prosecution must feel, this is what I know for sure from just my legal analysis and experience, for them to say, we are going to, within days of this jury being recessed to deliberate and determine a verdict after a almost 7-week case, we are making a strategic decision as the prosecution to not hang our hat, so to speak, on the attempted kidnapping and the arson. Means they don't feel good, right? They don't feel good, Carlos King, about the arguments and evidence that they have put forth to this jury to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that these things occurred the way they laid them out. You kind of said it real plain. Let's go back to it. Kid Cudi. We heard from Kid Cudi. He testified. He talked about a lot of what Sean Combs allegedly said to him, what Capricorn Clark allegedly said, this. But it all fell short, and we agreed on this. It all fell a little short of proving beyond that reasonable doubt. Like there was no fingerprints of Sean Combs on the Porsche, for instance, right? There's no video of Sean Combs or someone that worked for Sean Combs actually admitting, executing the explosion. So there's a lot of innuendo. There's a lot of suspicion. There's a lot of probably, but did it get to the evidentiary requirement, Carlos, of absolute proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Did the prosecution successfully put forth empirical evidence to prove and connect the dots entirely around Sean Combs and this team being responsible for Kid Cudi's car being blown up? No. And that's what we hear the prosecution kind of admitting in this adjustment to the jury instruction. So that tells me that the defense maybe made some headway when they started questioning, well, why weren't the gloves that were found on the scene in the Porsche tested? Why weren't some of these other pieces of evidence further investigated? So even the prosecution, Carlos, thinks that we didn't really land that plane entirely as it relates to the arson. Clearly, they don't think they landed the Capricorn Clark kid, because I think that was the kidnapping piece, right? When we talk about attempted kidnapping, there were more examples. We heard of other people being, allegedly summoned here and pulled there and not free to leave. But I think the most specific, framing of an attempted kidnapping was when we heard Capricorn Clark get on the stand around week 3 and say, Sean Combs came to get me, held me at gunpoint, told me to get in the car, and we're going for a ride to Kid Cudi's house, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Apparently, this prosecution, Carlos, they must not feel super confident in the ability for this jury to get kidnapping out of Capricorn and other people's testimony. And they clearly don't feel good about this jury getting definitively arson at the hands of Sean Combs from Kid Cudi's testimony. That is what these moves tell me.
Now, I want to stick to this before I move on to the rest of the stuff that they're amending. You got to give props to Ebony K. Williams, who called this out weeks ago. So Ebony K. Williams said, I'm talking about you like you're not here, but
no, but I love it because I'm actually recalling all of our sessions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no, Ebony called it out. So Raindrops. By the way, we are live. This is not a premiere. This is not pre-tape. This is live. Breaking news. Ebony called out from day one. She said Dawn Richard's testimony was a wash. That should not even be considered. Ebony even said, look, Capricorn Clark's testimony is okay. But you always said the main testimonies that we'll get to later was always Cassie's and Cassie's mother.
And her mother.
Because you said especially the mother that it gave much more reasoning behind the actions due to him saying, give me the amount of money or I'm going to release the sex tape of your daughter, allegedly. So with all of that being said, do you think the prosecution, based on the fact that they are resting, the prosecution has rested their case, can they prove RICO?
Here's what, before I answer that directly, and I will give you a straightforward answer because I think you deserve it and the audience deserves it. I don't think they feel super good about it. And I'm going to tell you who does feel good about their inability to prove RICO: Sean Combs' defense. Because in addition to us not hearing from him, which all reasonable minds agree is the right decision, they didn't call a single witness, Carlos. Not one. Some folks would say nary. You got to be from the South to understand nary. Nary a witness was called by this defense team. Seriously. And that, I think, surprised a lot of us. Because remember, we speculated last episode, who possibly could the defense call to testify on behalf of Sean Combs's good character or good business dealings or something to balance, this horrendous portrayal of him that we have gotten from the prosecution for 6 weeks straight. And when you see a defense team, which is always their right, I believe we talked about this, but I'll reiterate Raindrops. The defense doesn't have to prove a damn thing, not one thing. They must prove nothing. They have no burden of proof whatsoever in this or any criminal trial. And all the burden is on the prosecution, Carlos, whether it's the United States government, as in a federal case, or a state government, as in local state cases, right? Prosecution only must meet their burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did what they said they did. And if the defense feels that the prosecution did such a poor job meeting their standard of proof, and I've seen it, and with my own two eyes, hand to God, the defense can stand up and say, Your Honor, we move for a directed verdict. We don't believe that the prosecution has come close to meeting their burden. We present no witnesses. We present no substantive defense, and the defense rests. And they're resting on the fact that the prosecution was so incompetent that they don't have to put forth a witness that is then going to be subject to cross-examination, and then they could get tricky. They don't have to put forth their defendant to be cross-examined, and again, it gets tricky. They can simply say that this prosecution was so inept, so inadequate, so lacking of meeting their burden that our job here is done. As the defense, we call no witnesses, we put forth our client not, and we simply have a seat and rest our case, knowing that this jury cannot convict our client because they have not been presented with sufficient evidence. That is what this defense team is saying, Carlos King, right now.
And that was the part that was so shocking to me because, again, as we watch court shows and movies, you see the prosecution's case and then you see the defense case. The fact that, so Raindrops, listen up, we are live. The fact that I'm gagging, Sean Combs' defense attorney, they're not even trying to present a case, which really showcases the confidence that they have in what they possibly consider to be the lack of evidence that the prosecution did to prove their case. You have to be really confident in order to say, I'm not bringing up now witness. I'm not bringing up my client. I'm not bringing up nobody. No. The defense rests. So much so that they're saying that the jury may deliberate starting on Monday. But before we get into all of that,
we will get closing arguments. We will get closing arguments. So we'll get closing arguments first, likely first from the prosecution. Okay. And then that will be their opportunity. And they gotta, I think this is why we got that letter that we just got today. I think they have, as a team, we know it's 6 women that lead this prosecution. I think they and maybe their bosses have sat down and maybe, dare I say, Carlos, identified some of the cracks in their effort that I have named, the order of witnesses that I think could have led the jurors rather to be a bit confused, a bit just, kind of disjointed in terms of the order in which they should be thinking of things. I think this prosecution, Carlos, could be reflecting on the fact that we are asking a lot of this jury to find adequate testimony and evidence of this racketeering, this sex trafficking, this hiring prostitutes to cross state lines. And we want them to agree that we met the burden of proving kidnapping and arson. That's a lot. So let's take some of this off the table. So to me, what do I think, Carlos? I think it's a little late. I think they would have been better served. This is just me talking. Had they more streamlined this prosecution earlier on, let's say at the onset, decided, okay, we can absolutely prove through testimony and physical evidence this and this, and stayed on that the whole time. And not give us the Astroglide and the 6-inch heels and the Punisher and this. I just think it all got too murky, to use a word. It all got too convoluted. It all got too lost in the sauce, if you will. And so now, before they wrap it up and literally give us closing arguments and literally send this case to this jury, they're saying, let us take some of this off the table. Let us, we have a term for it, Carlos. We want to narrowly tailor our argument. We now want to kind of streamline it, if you will, for the jurors. And I think they would have been better served doing that on day one, actually, and not throwing so much at this jury. And now after the fact, after you had them listen to, I think, over 26 witnesses, maybe 30 plus. I mean, my God, so many days of testimony, so many different verticals of proving assault and this and that and all that. And I just think now it's like, now let's clean it up. And it's a little late. And I do think as they go into closing arguments, the prosecution is now going to have to really discipline themselves. I'm going to use that word, right? To say, as we send you jurors to this room to determine the fate of Sean Combs and render justice for these alleged victims, we want you to focus on the RICO and racketeering, the fact that a criminal enterprise, the fact that a business enterprise, Bad Boy Combs Enterprises, existed, the fact that Sean Combs was the leader and in control of it, very important element required by law, that in that ecosystem of this enterprise, criminal activities occurred, right? So this is the wiring of the money, back and forth between Cassie's mom, Regina Ventura. This is allegedly, some of the sex acts that happened through coercion that people would not have participated in, Carlos King, but for the threat of Sean Combs. And we heard this testimony just recently, Sean Combs essentially waving the tape and saying, if you don't do this freak off when we get to New York, I'm going to play this tape for the world and your life is going to be over. So that's coercion. That's proving that this was not consensual behavior. That's what that closing argument from the prosecution has to look like. And we ask that on that basis, you come back and you find Mr. Sean Combs guilty of racketeering, sex trafficking, and prostitution, grace, alliance. Now, the defense closing argument is going to be very simple. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have graciously given this court and this community almost 2 months of your life. And for that, we thank you. And for those 2 months, you heard a lot of narrative. and it probably presented a bad man to you. We think he might be a bit of a bad man. But what you didn't hear was empirical, consistent, credible evidence that Mr. Combs did anything that violated federal law. You heard of a man who has a lot of wealth, a lot of influence, maybe some personal demons, maybe some sexual proclivities that differ from what we're used to in a decent society. But we affirm and we reiterate to you that the requirements of a racketeering charge, of sex trafficking, and of prostitution across state lines, the evidence is not there. The prosecution spent all their time, all your time, trying to make the case, and they simply couldn't do it. We know they couldn't do it, which is why even in your instructions that you're about to receive, you're not going to be asked about arson. You're going to be told not to consider kidnapping. We think that shows you a lot about just what this case is missing. We ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. That's how their argument's going to go.
Ebony K. Williams, I felt like I was part of the jury.
You ready to cast your vote? Negro, you ready to cast your vote? You don't get a vote, Carlos. You don't get no vote, Carlos.
The fact that, let me tell you, okay, listen, Kayla Wayla said Ebony ate down with this closing. No. So Kayla Wayla, thanks for joining us midday on a Wednesday. Kayla Wayla, I'm with you, sis, because I was so stoic due to the fact that Ebony off the dome was
I wish you could see. Listen, baby, look. The paperwork don't lie. It don't lie, Carlos. Baby, I've been doing this for a minute, baby. Don't get me in my moot court bag, baby. Okay, go ahead.
Clock it. No. Kayla Wayla, I'm with you and the rest of the raindrops, right? Listen, we got Lynn Coleman who said she rocked that. So check this out. And raindrops, let's have a real conversation. It's the reason why I made sure to get somebody who actually have law degrees.
Yeah.
Because I wanted us to be able to explain what was going on. And hear me when I say this loud and clear. The fact that Ebony K. Williams, who has been following this case since day one, that has been featured with TMZ, myself, and many other
ABC
outlets.
News. Yeah,
yes, ABC News.
The hierarchy, honey. Yes.
Yes, she's been all over the world talking about this. The fact that my girl, with all of the information she incurred through following this trial for 2 months, was able, off the dome, live, with no notepad, no legal pad, was able to give a closing argument that made me think twice about what I heard. I'm not saying I'm going to vote whatever, but the
and point, I'm not saying that's how I personally even feel, Carlos. But
right?
Yeah, but you see, this is how it's done. This is how it's done.
Yes, yeah. Ebony, they want you to run for president, child. So
we'll put a pin in that, Miss Nina. Miss Nina.
We want baby Liberty to be the first daughter, child. Okay, so look.
Well, she got the name for it, baby. Black Liberty. Let's go.
Yeah. So the fact that Ebony was able to construct a closing argument based on her information, again, not saying she agrees with that, but that's just what she would have said. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I, who have been following this alongside her, if I was a juror and I heard Ebony's closing argument, I would be like, okay, jurors, because let's be clear, I would be the lead juror, child, because that's how
yeah. There's a name for that, honey. You're the jury foreman, honey. The foreman.
I would be... Carlos King would be a jury foreman because I like to take the lead.
You would be giving the first exclusive interview to Diane Sawyer when you got off the stand.
Yes, honey. Y'all know how Carlos rocks. Mm-hmm. I'm saying all of this to say I would question some of the things I heard based on that closing argument that Ebony did in this mock trial. So keep that in mind, Raindrops. It's something the happy one said Diddy should have hired Ebony. I mean, everybody needs to hire Ebony at this point. So one thing that I do want to
will continue. Wink, wink.
There you go.
Some have already incurred since we've been doing this series. Wink, wink.
Yes, that's
True Crime Thursdays needs to be a thing. But anyways, go ahead, Carlos.
Well, you know, Ebony. Hence this breaking
we'll
news
talk about that offline.
Okay.
We'll talk about that offline. Yeah.
So yesterday, the defense did argue to the jury that the prosecutors failed to prove alleged crimes
Yeah.
The defense says there's no evidence that the ex-chief of staff knew of facilitated coercion. The defense argued that the government failed to prove Combs coerced Cassie into sex acts. And what we do know is the fact that this is the one thing I do want to address that I have in my notes. The prosecutors did say they are not dropping the various sex trafficking charges, only elements of them, and specifically adding aiding and abetting. The prosecutors do say in their letter, Ebony, they want an instruction. Hear me out, Raindrops. The prosecutors did say in their letter, they want an instruction that just because women like Cassie and Jane Doe gave prior consent to sexual acts, it does not mean that it can never be withdrawn.
Yes. Yes. And that's important. That's important. Okay. Let's go back. Do we recall, Carlos, early on, maybe our first or second True Crime Thursday, when there was a forensic psychiatrist rather that testified, Dr. somebody, white lady. You remember to go way back in the archives. A white woman psychiatrist testified day 2 or 3. Remember now? She was
I do.
This goes back to my critique of the prosecution. We should have heard from her at this tail end. You know why?
You said that too, but go ahead.
I said that. Why? Because after the jury hears from Cassie, Mia, even Capricorn, Jane Doe, all of the ex-girlfriends, the personal assistants that claim to be raped. See, after they heard from a variety of alleged victims from Sean Combs's hands.
Her name is Dr. Dawn Hughes.
Thank you, Dr. Dawn Hughes. She came really early, but had she come to button this up, how much more powerful put yourself in the jury seat again, Carlos. Now you've heard over 6-7 weeks from 5 different women that have alleged various similar, but slightly different, but similar tales of this man abusing them, beating them, raping them, assaulting them, but also them loving. Oh, thank you. Drain jobs full. You know, we family here. Baby Liberty is home today because she has hand, mouth, and foot disease. Some of y'all know about that life.
Yeah.
So she is recovering. Thank you. And I'm trying to just keep her happy. Okay.
I feel like Liberty has something she wants to say because she's following her mommy footsteps.
Yeah. Liberty's actually coming from my job, child, but that's another story for another day. Ma'am, you need to have a seat and get in the queue. But anyway, okay. So after if the jury hears from all of these 5 ladies telling these horrendous tales of abuse and trauma, but also admitting, hey, and I did ask for my job back. And hey, I did still love him even after this horrible beating and rape. And guess what? Cassie says, I still kind of love him even now. If we had heard from Dr. Dawn now, after all of that has resonated and processed, and you hear the expert psychiatrist Carlos tell us, this is typical of the abuse cycle. This is not abnormal, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to hear victims, legitimate victims of actual abuse, both sexual, physical, emotional, and mental, all of the above, still have some element of Stockholm Syndrome attachment, have trauma bonded, and yes, even consent to some things for a temporary period of time, and they still have every absolute legitimate and legal right to withdraw that consent at any time for any duration of time. And that is normal. That is clinically consistent with what I see with the patients and treatment that I give out. That becomes important. But because in order for this, they're going to give that instruction, like you said, that consent can be withdrawn at any time, and that's great. But it's also kind of how does that resonate emotionally with a jury after you've asked them to withstand so much, but be a testimony and witnesses, and you've shown them videos and pictures. They're going to have to try to now connect this instruction, which is very important, Consent can be withdrawn or given at any given time. And just because somebody consents to one thing, that does not establish continual consent throughout. Very important fact. But how does it land and last with these jurors when they've got to go back to week one to connect it to the clinical expert that told them so? See what I'm saying? I think there's so much more impact when you bring that clinical expert at the end of this. So chronologically speaking, right, the jurors, this is closer in time. So they're able to say, yes, the expert, the objective expert just told us how this consent thing works. You're asking too much of this jury, Carlos, to ask them to go back 6 weeks to make that connection.
And that's been the thing. Ebony, I always like to give you your props when you are able to call something out beforehand and it turns out to be the reality. Ebony said weeks ago, we talked about the comparison between the charming personalities of Puffy and O.J. Simpson. How these two men were seen to the public as charming individuals. We did talk about what he testified. Ebony said, if I was his attorney, I would say no, but to behave well in court. Diddy did speak in court yesterday, and I want to tell the raindrops exactly what happened. Actually, this was today. I'm sorry, today. While the jury was not present, the judge addressed Puffy directly about his decision not to testify in his own defense. The judge, Raindrops and Ebony, asked Puff how he's feeling. Diddy said, I'm doing great, Your Honor. I've been wanting to tell you thank you. You're doing an excellent job. The judge chuckled and said, thank you. I appreciate that. Before
I say a thing, when you heard and read that, what did you think, Carlos?
As a student of the University of Eddie K. Williams, as a person whose job is to deal with different personality types, when I saw that, it reminded me of what you and I talked about, and it's the fact that Diddy is charming. He's charming, and Diddy knew I'm not going to allow my ego to get the best of me by being on the stand, because at the end of the day, no shade, he is performative. He's a performer. Diddy has never met a Kodak lens he didn't like, right?
Amen. True.
Let's be clear. But he also knew I have this personality and it somehow has to come out. The fact that he said to the judge, I've been meaning to tell you you're doing an excellent job. Thank you. And for the judge to chuckle, I think the judge knew, like, okay, like this is what he does, but it's the part of the Diddy charm. And I think Diddy knew I don't have to testify to sort of warm the audience. I can do that within a millisecond. And the judge could have laughed because he clocked it, or the judge could have laughed because he's like, that's Diddy. At the end of the day, it is Diddy. What did you think?
I think the judge clocked it. So I think, this is what I think. I think Puff is always going to try it. Diddy's going to try it because he's a natural performer. It's in him. He can't not, right? Here's the thing, though. This is very similar to me, Carlos, as to when you are sitting in that center seat at a reunion. So let's say one of my favorite shows, Bell Collective. Let's just say, for example, I'm serious. Follow me.
I know. I am.
You know what I'm doing? And you're sitting there and you've got your cards and you're ready to do your job, which is to be a neutral party, right? And moderate this reunion and give everybody a fair chance to speak their piece. But you know how, let me guess what happened. And I've never been there, Raindrops, but let me just guess. Y'all know they didn't give me a reunion. We won't talk about that now, though. Don't worry about it. No tea, no shade. No tea, no shade. But let me guess what happens, Carlos. You're sitting there, pre-production, beautiful young lady, cast member 1 comes out. Hi, Carlos. You look great. You look great. How you feeling? Yeah, I'm excited about today. Take it easy on me now. Okay. Cast member number 2. Ooh, yes, serving, Carlos. You're serving. Yes, you better give it to us. And what are you doing? You're doing just what this judge did. Okay, sweetheart. Yeah, we're gonna because you clocked it. There's a saying in the world and in this industry, flattery will get you everywhere. But just like you, Carlos, who has been doing this for over 20 years, and this judge, who, yes, is relatively young by way of federal judges, but is very experienced and doing this long enough, he has been flattered by likes stronger and more persuasive, actually, than Sean Combs. So that's the chuckle for me. Like mass murderers have flattered this judge, literally. You know, like the serial killers of them all. So Puff, with your little, you're doing a great job, Your Honor. That was cute. Cute. Really cute. That was the chuckle. Yeah, like Negro, please. If the judge could have said Negro, please, he would have said it. But cute, but very cute. Yeah.
So, Ebony, before I let you and Baby Liberty go, because I could talk to you either, you know that.
Yeah. But you got that parallel, because it's the exact same thing.
No, it's the thing. It's sort of like charming the pants off the person who kind of holds your fate in a sense, right? So again, when I'm hosting a reunion, it's like, let me disarm Carlos so he don't go too hard on me with the questions.
And guess what you still do? Because I've seen it in real time. Go in on the questions. Yeah, you still go in on it. And that's, you know what? This judge is going to do the same. He's not going to be put, you know, he's not going to be disarmed by "you're doing a great job" from Sean Combs of all people. You know, no shade, no disrespect. You know, You know, I don't think it's going to hurt him, you know, but it certainly did him no favors. And actually, a different kind of judge, a more, let's say, old, crusty establishment type of judge, could have actually reprimanded him.
Oh yeah, because
you're like, that's doing really out of order. Yeah, that's actually out of order, and really could have really read him. And I've seen that too. Defense counsel, instruct your client to not speak to me, you fucking peasant. I have seen that too. What the fuck time you think this is that you can even talk to me? Motherfucker, please. You know, excuse my French, but I've seen that. So he's lucky that he got the hip cool headphone wearing, backpack carrying, you know, millennial judge who just gave him a little chuckle and told him to keep it cute.
Keep it cute.
Yeah.
Ebony, I have the $1 million question for Ebony that everybody wants to know.
Oh God.
Based on everything you've heard up until the present day, everybody's been debating this, from the Breakfast Club, your friend Charlamagne, mine too, to everybody who is on CNN TMZ. Does Ebony K. Williams feel that Diddy will be found guilty of any of the charges, or will he walk away free?
Intellectually, I feel that there was evidence put forward to garner a conviction of some of these charges. But the way this is all coming together in the final inning, in a trial, Carlos, is no different than a basketball game. It's no different than a season of Bell Collective or Huntsville or any other housewife show. So we could watch 12 episodes of a storyline playing out like this. We can see 3 quarters of this team dominating. But if in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, the momentum shifts, we get what we get. Same thing with the show, right? We could be team so-and-so all season long, but we see some shit them last 2 episodes. And what I'm saying in this moment, when you ask me that direct question, is I think that I have witnessed and we have experienced a momentum shift in this trial in the last couple of days, even hours, that going into these jury deliberations, absent a remarkable, disciplined, concise closing argument from this prosecution, Carlos King, that connects A to B to C in a way that I just haven't seen them be able to do thus far. It's almost like they've given you everything, but then left the jurors to figure it out on their own. Left the jurors to put it together to the best they can and I think it's too much to ask of a jury of lay people. And I think that it will hurt them. I think that the defense is going to benefit from this kind of what feels like a little bit of chaos going into closing arguments. When you've got a prosecution writing a letter saying we're doing this instead of that, it's what we call self-inflicted pivot. You know, they're not doing it in response to the defense. They're kind of second guessing themselves. That's what they're doing, Carlos. It can't be interpreted any other way. You went out to prove something and you don't feel good about how well you did. So now we're trying to pivot and condense and package it differently and slim it down and shine it up. I think it's a real possibility that we see Sean Combs not guilty on all counts. I really do. Yeah. And I like I said, I'm not saying it's because there wasn't some evidence to show that he did some of the things he was charged with. But I take some real issue with the way it was presented to this jury. And if he's found not guilty, that should be looked at. That should be looked at. It's okay, sweetie.
Ladies, gentlemen, gays and days, the incomparable legal eagle, the woman who has set this trial on fire by her wisdom and most importantly, her education. Okay, this is not somebody I'm talking to who likes true crime. Like, this is a woman who has went to law school, who has degrees, who graduated. So, Ebony, I cannot thank you enough. You'll be back next week once the jury starts to deliberate. And obviously, the moment we get a verdict, Ebony and I hopefully will be able to go live because we're all over the place.
I would hope so. Yeah.
But I will cancel everything I have in my meetings now to make that happen. So, Ebony, thank you so much for hopping on this live. Give my love to Baby Liberty. And I will see you next week.
Much love, Carlos. Bye, Raindrops.
Bye. Oh, Raindrops, Ebony killed it once again. I learned a new thing, as y'all can see. The kids are doing this with these clocking. Is it the right fingers? I don't know. But anyways, she did that. I mean, goodness gracious, the papers. She did that. No, thank you, Jenny Bloom, for watching Pillow Talk with Giselle. Thank you. This was live. Joseph Stevenson was live. It's live. I'm calling your name, child. All right. So, wow. All right. So listen, I can't even talk. I'm so informed about what Ebony said. We will be back next week. The jury is going to deliberate starting Monday, according to TMZ and CNN. I have nothing else to say. I'm in shock right now. I'm in shock. But Raindrops, if you haven't watched it, my exclusive interview with Angela Oakley is out. Watch that. I'm doing another episode with Courtney Parker for Reality Crimes that's dropping Friday. And maybe I'll go live tomorrow. We'll see. All right. I love you guys so much. Raindrops, you guys are the best. And I will see y'all soon.